You're live. Yeah. Oh my leg. Oh, voice?
Yeah, we can hear you. That's right. We see his.
Facebook's got a new way of doing it, right? They're having a live streaming app right now. You can live stream anything that you're doing. So, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. We've been hosting a series of events using the DevOps Live group, and we're continuing to host these events, right? So, it partly happens at CA location, it happens at Heartland Payment Systems, and we also have a location in Addison, right? So, we've combined all of the DevOps groups in Dallas into one called DevOps Live. We have about 450 plus members right now, just trying to come up with new topics, essentially not product selling or vendor centric, just making it generic. If you're interested tomorrow to present a topic, you can feel free to reach out to us and then we'll make it work. Today we have Skyler from CA. He's an infrastructure expert. He's going to talk about a day in the life of an operations manager. Thank you. Good, Skyler.
Awesome, very good. Thanks, Gokul, and thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon or this evening. Really appreciate it, and really excited to be involved in this meetup. I got to join a couple, maybe it was a month or so back, and so really looking forward to getting to share with everybody today. And just like we were doing in the intro here, likewise, I think it's valuable for everybody if we all get to glean from everybody's experience, what their the challenges and thoughts are in the industry right now. And we'll kind of use the following slides as kind of a segue to that to some of those conversation points as we go on through this. So please feel free to keep this interactive. Definitely want to get your input as we're walking through all of this. And so as I was getting to catch up with a few of you here before we started, my background is actually from a small MSP here based out of Dallas. And so got to work on really the networking side of the operations team and ensuring network availability and connectivity of a nationwide MPLS network and all the intricacies that go into making sure that's up and available and keeping retail stores connected. And really how do you monitor and manage a network of that scale? And so we're not going to be focused strictly on networking here today. We're really going to try and span the entire infrastructure stack. I know we've had a lot of conversation around the DevOps and code deployment leading into this talk, and we can certainly, as that fits into what we're talking about here, definitely want to continue on in that trend as it relates to the code half of that DevOps picture. And so, there we go. So, and today, as we're as our companies are growing, as we're changing, as we're adding new applications, as our infrastructure is evolving, we were talking about AWS and auto scaling. How do I fit into the picture of what is now a really dynamic environment that can scale up, that can scale down, that's starting to encompass not only those legacy systems that we were just talking about, but spanning into the new infrastructure that's supporting that application as we move forward into the future, and is really going to help drive what's that customer experience look like, and how do we scale to meet the expectations of those customers in terms of how they're accessing that app, what's the response time that they're getting out of that application, which really all contributes to that DevOps challenge, or specifically we're talking about operations managers today. It contributes to that operations side of things challenge. And how do we, not only maintain a team that has the expertise in managing and administrating all these things, but set up a process that makes that management fluid. So we were talking about release automation and managing code through deployment. Well, now I'm adding resources on top of that, and often dynamically. How do I manage and monitor and retain information from those types of systems as well, which is really what I'd love to dive into with everybody today. You'll see, I actually got to borrow a couple slides from our marketing department because, as marketing does, research is something that they generally do so well, which really helps frame the context of our conversation, on that operations side of things. Whenever we're talking about managing disparate systems, we're talking about the silos that exist inside of that infrastructure. And it's interesting to me to see just how many people are managing that across multiple different tools, which creates not only problems for our operations team, but our dev team whenever it comes to problem resolution time, and ultimately for that end user customer experience. Because whenever we're bouncing between tools to see across the network, to see across our stores, to see across our databases, we're not actually getting at the root and at the heart of what's going on and what's impacting that end user experience. So that was really interesting to me, and it sounds like we've got a lot of dev folks in the house tonight, but I'm interested to hear from you all as far as in your respective roles right now. Do you know how many different tools are currently being leveraged to monitor across either production or the UAT side of things?
DSM, Wiley, Tivoli, VCops.
Yep.
That's just for on my few applications.
Sure.
So there are even more that I'm not aware of. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, metrics and logging, services and so like Splunk, Loggly, Elasticsearch, InfluxDB. I mean, we got New Relic. We use a lot.
Sure. Yeah, and that's interesting. I appreciate y'all sharing because that's something that not only the customers that I work with on a daily basis, it's a sentiment that's kind of reflected through those conversations, and how do I tie all that together so I get an accurate picture of application in the context of the service as opposed to infrastructure in a singular context of the network, of the database, of the servers themselves. And so kind of continuing on down that trend, just the sheer number of companies that aren't actually gauging what does performance look like at all, and much less balancing that across multiple tools. If I can't gauge and monitor performance from that infrastructure side of things, then now not only do I have the problem that I've identified on the application side of things, but I also have no context around if that's actually an application-related issue or if that's something that's related to the infrastructure that application is running on. And so really evaluating that based on both of those factors and having an accurate view is key whenever it comes to effective operations management and having that day in the life of what an operations team is really battling as far as the challenges of managing multiple different tools and effectively being able to gauge performance. And actually, just you bringing up AWS there at the beginning, I think I was looking at, we work with a couple of different customers that, face the challenge of, now I'm in AWS, how do I get the performance metrics out of that? And so, and a lot of, you were asking how we did it. So we interfaced with CloudWatch to pull out those performance and availability metrics. And so while I was doing some research around AWS in particular, it shocked me. I came across a note in one of the articles that said, AWS isn't actually, you're not paying for performance, you're paying for availability. Well, what if my performance is in the tank, right? How am I monitoring and detecting that once I scale into the cloud? And so keeping an eye on, even though we are moving to a lot more cloud-focused providers for a lot of the core infrastructure pieces that go into that application picture, how am I monitoring what they're doing on my behalf, not just from an availability standpoint, but from an end user experience, from a customer standpoint as well. And so, we talk about in the ops team, and I was sharing, a couple years back, I was really focused on just strictly the networking side of the house. But whenever it comes to operations management, we really need to find that spot where we can see across different silos that exist inside of the operations team. I actually, after the MSP, I actually worked for a Cisco training partner, and there was about I don't know, probably 5 of us on the IT support staff. And so once we identified we were doing no monitoring whatsoever, and once we identified where the problem was inside of our infrastructure, be it on the UCS, on the EMC, on the network, and inside of that what can be a really complex architecture, then it was a matter of, well, who knows how to fix it, right? And I'm sure some of the smaller companies can relate to the same challenge of once you identify the problem, well, then it turned out it was my responsibility. Now I was the new expert in UCS and EMC and NetApp, and so yes, gotta go ahead and log in there and fix it real fast for us. So being able to have something that really gives you the visibility across all those different pieces in a way that's going to bring back the relevant information to the relevant parties, be that the storage administrator, the database administrator, but also give a view into the end user experience, which is really paramount inside of the whole equation and why we monitor all these different pieces at all. And so I know I've gotten sped through a couple of slides here, but I just wanted to pause and see if there was any questions, any kind of relatable stories to really what we've been going on, so we can really share in the whole group experience as far as what's your experience been with be it operational silos or managing between different tools, things like that.
I think you shared probably a universal issue, right? Not having an SME or probably not monitoring, and then probably spending tons of time first to identify where the issue is, and then spending tons of time to figure out who the person is to fix it, and then that person spending a ton of time to fixing it.
Right.
That's all the time that my application is done, or at least not performing.
Absolutely.
So, but then what you're talking about is not a cloud; it's a legacy environment where there's not a shareable, or there is not, my infrastructure is within my range, within my reach. It's
Sure.
not somebody else is maintaining that infrastructure, right?
Sure.
Because cloud could be completely different.
Absolutely.
On that side, maybe if you were how should I say, you were maintaining that rack which is supporting the cloud, then it's a different story. Then you're not just impacting one customer, you're impacting vast majority,
Sure.
set of customers. Right?
Absolutely. And speaking of the kind of the cloud aspect of it, we were diving in for a different customer the other day, really how, so say I scale into AWS. Again, it's not my infrastructure. I don't often have, or in AWS case, never have access to whatever the hypervisor is that's running that, to be able to capture the metrics I want to see from the hypervisor perspective. I only get what they present to me from that EC2 hosts. And so, that raises the problem of, how do I detect a noisy neighbor whenever they're starting to infringe on the space that, that I've ultimately paid for, and that's now impacting the application. And I was reading the other day, I think was it Netflix was kind of brought about the whole noisy neighbor problem. And one of the tools that they ended up using was something that, once you detected a noisy neighbor, somebody infringing on your resources, they actually collapsed and reprovisioned an entire new instance, and theoretically on a new host inside of that architecture. So it's not so much even combating a noisy neighbor; it's running from it, which I thought was something that was interesting, especially in the cloud space.
Chaos Monkey. That's what probably they did.
Was it? I didn't even. The article didn't mention the name of the article.
That's something.
Or the.
I think the term called Chaos Monkey, which Netflix.
Well, that's where they purposely fail
Right.
systems to
Yeah,
adapt,
right.
yeah, not necessarily
Not
legitimate
not this
failure.
one. Oh, I got you.
So is it a,
Yeah.
so is that just a testing method?
Yeah, Chaos Monkey.
Yeah.
They just pulled the plug out of.
Oh, just,
like, it's
It's
just
part of
kind
a greater tool called the Simian Army.
Yeah.
So they've got a janitor monkey, and
Yeah.
chaos monkey, and security monkey.
Yeah.
The concept is to introduce chaos into the system on purpose to test its hardened state.
High availability, basically.
into production?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
Isn't that scary?
Let's keep that 99.99.
Yep,
Yeah.
prove that they can do it, yeah. Instead of waiting for failure to happen,
That's,
the idea is that you train purposeful failure so that when you have legitimate unpurposeful
Yeah,
failure,
you're
you
ready for it.
perform better.
Sure.
Because it's a practice skill. If you practice it,
Yeah.
especially if you're 5'9", so you're not practicing failure all the time. So
It's
And
interesting.
then-
it's a smart philosophy.
It is.
Right.
Our practice, let me tell you what our practice is. Our practice is, hey, by the way, you have written some steps, let's follow them. Oh, I'm telling you a week in advance, I'm gonna turn your system off.
Right.
Oh, I'm already, my users don't go log into the system.
That's a very orderly monkey.
And they actually do it, just one day, nobody notices, just plug it off. They'll plug off, like, I don't know how many percentage of servers, they just plug it off and say, let's see, we get latency or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's placing a big bet on your HA setup there.
Yeah.
They have an when purchasing insurance.
That's true. That's true. if you're able to sustain it, for sure.
Yeah.
So we got to really outline, what are the challenges look like today on for that operations manager, and what are the new things that are coming into that architecture? How are they adding to that additional complexity as we're scaling out the infrastructure, onboarding new supporting mechanisms that go into that picture? And so it really begs the need for something that's going to give you that view across multiple different systems, something that's going to be a single point of truth for multiple different teams. Because whenever we're managing infrastructure like that, when we've got our network team looking at their network monitoring tools, we've got our DBs looking at something else. We've got our cloud deployment team that are monitoring through CloudWatch, and now it becomes a game not so much of identifying and resolving the problem that's ultimately impacting the end user. It becomes a game of, hey, no, it's on the network side. I'm certain of it. I looked. Trust me. I looked at the database. It's definitely on the network side. But once we start to pull all that information together and present it to all the teams involved, that's where we really get at the heart of identifying and ultimately resolving the issues that are impacting that end user experience. And I know I heard somebody mention, just as we were talking beforehand, just the approach of taking a proactive monitoring standpoint as opposed to a reactive. Who was that was talking through that earlier?
We are actually, I was saying that my group is now divided into two teams now. One is L1, one is L2, and then L1, level 1 job is just to monitor so that whenever problems comes in, they don't hit customers. So they're kind of keeping a track of them versus customer. How many problems have customer identified? How many problems have they identified before even it reaches customer? So they are kind of,
Okay.
so the idea is L2 team, which is now they have taken everything from us, so that our sole responsibility is to get the system, get the applications more efficient. Again, get analysis more stronger, so that we can help intern L1 to proactively identify the issues rather than react to the issues.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's the division. That's where this cloud computing comes into the picture. So monitoring and everything out, but they first have to figure it out what to monitor,
Sure.
how to monitor actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what it is.
Absolutely. That is interesting. Yeah.
I was hoping somebody could share with the group a war room experience. And I guess for my own sort of learning sake as well. Because that's what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. Anybody? No takers?
You mean like when you're under attack like a DDoS? Or like what's all entailed when you think war room?
Oh, like I think just straight out of the Phoenix Project. You have an outage, network guys today, it's not, we're all green.
Oh yeah. We don't often get everybody together. Yeah.
No, we do. For us, since Chase is such a big company, it's very hard to bring networking team, infrastructure team, application development team, application operations team. Then so the war room is literally once you go on a call, it's a step 1 or step 2 or step 3 ticket, depending upon it's a P1, right? So what happens is when the bridge opens up, everybody goes in. Of course, everybody looks at their monitoring section of it, whoever has it, and then sees if they are green or not. And if they say we are green, then that proof of it, so that they can go off of it, saying, okay, you know what, networking is green. I could see the hops going in from different inlet routes. They provide, everybody of us provide our finding of analysis of the problem, which should be very quick since step 3, step 2, step 1. So that probably once we first identify where could the problem be depending upon it, could be network, could be infrastructure. So that's where normally the first thing comes up is infrastructure, is it the application team is looking at it, all parallelly working on, and then slowly one by one we'll eliminate the obvious one. Okay, nothing wrong with network, nothing wrong with infrastructure. Okay, now database, something has to do with it. But by that time, we normally do have availability. If it's taking that long, then the discussion starts on, hey, should we move to DR while we are, resolving this, and let the customers go on work on that. So within probably, depending upon the complexity of the application and the user base, within half an hour we decide on, let's move to DR. The DR steps are, started off. Move to DR, and behind the scenes, of course, we are on single point of failure at that point, but at least customers are on working and we are not taking that much loss. And then behind the scenes, we are now working on the problem. So if we have already cut down 50% of our usual suspects, then we are only left with some 3 or 4 teams which we can engage them and then give them enough time to research and figure out. But it's easier coming out like this, but when you actually go, it's so kind of chaotic. You have to have some good leader to actually stop all this chaos going around. Right? The 15, at least 20 people I know who are talking on the bridge simultaneously.
Do you have that as a scripted call? So you basically start, we're going to go through the OSI levels and.
Yeah, we practice those calls. Once in quarter, we don't get intimation. They don't bring our system now, but they'll bring a dummy problem to us, and then I'll get an email saying bridge start, or I get paged and whatnot. It's like a P1. So I take whatever steps I have to take. I have to tell my management and whatnot, because if I don't tell them just because it's dummy, they'll come back and say, hey, why the hell they didn't tell us? So I have to tell them, of course, in bracket I have to write a dummy call, but I have to give them a text message, give them an email. Hey, this is good, I'm on the call. Then we have assigned each role. Hey, there's an app director. After 1 hour has to join the bridge if the issue is not resolved. If it's 2 hours, then the MD has to join. If it's for step 1, if it's step 1 goes more than 1.5 to 2 hours, literally our policy says Jamie has to join that bridge. If step 1 goes more than, I think, 1 or 2 hours. So yeah, then our Chase board of directors, somebody from Chase board of directors will join, and then they lost, because that time a step 1 means about, I don't know, 5 million, I don't remember the exact number, but $5 million per 2 hours. So Chase is losing money that fast. So then they come up saying, stop everything, all hands on deck. Forget about your deployment, forget about this customer, forget about that customer. Just focus on this problem. So we practice those once a quarter. So, but then still, in real, when we are practicing it, everything works good. When the real problem comes in, that's when like, wow.
A little bit different than the practice.
It is. It is. I've been on many of such, and it's very tiring.
Now, are y'all
Especially when our
using-
databases go down, because nobody has any clues. That happened. Our database got corrupted. Nobody knows how. Some simple insert query was fired by somebody, and it corrupted the database. Now, that corruption, because it's a real-time sync process between my DR, tried my DR. Now, this was going on. They couldn't identify what caused the system down. Was it corruption? By that time, the backup was taken. So that corruption went to my backup. So my product is down, my DR is down, I can't restore. So they had to take 2 days worth of backup and then got to tape backups and then take those next, whatever 2 days were lost, had to take it from the tape backup to carry it. It was tiring process. But that's what happens when some issues like that happen. It's exactly what this thing happened. There's a lot of finger pointing. You just have to control that. You have to say, okay, if it's green, show me the data. If they have the data handy and they've done their analysis due diligence, they'll show the data with the pops up going good.
So is the problem manager who's running the call having like a screen sharing session
Yes.
so everybody is on the same page?
Yes,
What's happening?
it's considered as for us, it's another Adobe Connect that's going on. And then if there is a screen share, if there is a file to be shared, log files are shared there. Our networking team or any other application team, Splunk is one of the tools that we use to extract our logs to identify what's wrong and what not. That problem manager, we are calling it as a path manager. So that's how everything is set up.
So with that issue with the database, is there a lesson learned taken from that to stop doing backups during the
So-
outage?
We do an RCA. So RCA, we have to, it doesn't matter if it takes 5 people, 1 person, 6 resources, it doesn't matter. Within 15 days, we have to have an RCA cause on it. Assessment done, why it happened on the very first place, what was it that caused it? Of course, you have a root cause. The cause is that your data got corrupted. But the root cause is, why the hell data got corrupted?
Yeah, how did I let it get
How
corrupted?
did I
That's the
let it
more
get-
important
yeah,
question.
Exactly.
It's easy to point a finger, but
Yeah,
to make it so
yeah.
that doesn't happen. is-
So you have to take a step back. So that's root cause where it goes. And then how can I make sure, how can I prevent this from happening? Not just this. If somebody can figure out, oh, by the way, this situation can happen by this, and this as well. So I have to create 3-4 solutions at one point. And that RCA call, in case of SEV 1 and SEV 2, goes really high up. SEV 3, it's okay. SEV 3, it goes till MD and stuff. And they still follow up because they have to share it with our CIO and CEO of our mortgage banking. So it's very competitive, but it's controlled kind of surface, keep you from it. But I'm part of it too sometimes, because then senior managers will come in and they'll try to divert the conversation in different things. You have to be strong enough to say, hey, I don't care your MD, I don't care your this. You're taking this in the wrong direction. Just hold that in. You have to be very, very aggressive.
Do y'all practice that also during your simulations?
There will
You're
be,
dealing with aberrant behavior?
yes, no, that is true. There's somebody comes in, one practice call. You won't believe it. They're from our production, not production, our these stack managers. They'll come in, they'll play roles. Suddenly there is this one guy who's call, and then there's somebody, this solution, you shut up, you can't talk to her like that. See, on the call they were saying, no, you're wrong, you don't know anything. Have you done, what do you ever, did you ever single line of code? And then somebody else said, okay, hold on, let's talk about this bridge if you want, if you have suggestions, then take it out, and that's how they took it out. But yeah, they play every scenario that could happen. Person having a fight at home and joining the bridge. Guess what? All this was people will come on the bridge. And the higher you are, nobody can talk to you, I mean, they encourage it. It's like, it doesn't matter. No matter you're a developer and you're talking to an MD, if you think they are wrong, call it on.
So do you have a good method of bringing the late bloomers up to the current status of the call, as opposed to every time somebody joins 10 minutes later, you start
Yeah,
all the way
there is
back
a-
over again?
There is a good, I don't know if you guys know about TED Talk or not. There is a very good viral video on YouTube, which this guy simulates regular meeting. So it was really funny. So he goes on the stage and say, hey, this is my meeting, right? So this is how I do. Welcome everybody. Oh, I had a meeting. Who just joined? Okay. Welcome everybody. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 5 minutes in. So yeah, sometimes it happens where somebody comes in, hey, can you give me an update? At that time, it's what we practice, what we have been told, and what we normally do is that we don't give, if somebody asks that, I don't want to give 500 lines of what it is, it's already written on the side of the Adobe chat. This is, with the time, this is what happened, issue started, this is somebody did something. So we normally give them 2, 3 liners, max 4 liners, and then guide them, hey, if you want details, just read this follow-up.
So you're also recording in the chat section?
Yes, so there is one person whose
Like a recorder.
sole purposes, on step 1 at least, is just to keep typing whatever somebody says, yeah, I just run a ping on this server. It will be safe. On this day, this time, ping was run on that server, executed on that server, output was successful connection.
So it's a great opportunity to have a bot that's created to be able to do that transcription service.
Yeah, it is, but yeah, that's where the war room looks like. It's not exactly same what the Phoenix project book has. It's a virtual war room. I'm not being in real time where we are facing people. And I think that normally goes in a huge deployment that Chase has. Like for example, Chase was releasing the first time their mobile app. Then I think there were 3 days people were sitting inside a room. Literally 3 days they were like coming up. That room was always filled up to see how if there was any problem, any customer calls, maybe hey, I can't log into the application. They were right on there with their laptops, everything connected. They were fixing the problems right then and there. And they'd never go outside the room, it's just right there. But I was not part of it. I heard about it. But normally I'm part of more on virtual forums, not a real time. But yeah, it's a step-by-step process. Diverse. Some calls are really, very good. Very few I've seen which has gone completely sideways. And then we have to just be like, okay, this is not how things shut down. We'll read, the people are, researching it. Let's revisit after 30 minutes. That's how. Sometimes that's the only way to just stop the madness. Let them work, whoever is working, come back after 30 minutes. They have their own bridge, we give them their own bridge code. Technical people, the business people is not going to come into that bridge, ask you questions. You just technical people, you go and resolve it. And if business people know it, you just give them a different bridge. Say, come to this bridge. If you have any questions, ask us, we'll give you the answer. How long will it take? Don't know yet. When you know the impacts, whatever the impact is going to be. But that will not hamper the technical discussion that is going on.
But Scott, if this doesn't take us too far off topic, does
Yeah.
anybody else have any other words of wisdom how to do this wisely?
As far as just the war room scenario?
Or managing a escalated call?
Sure. And I think so. Kind of not to your question specifically, but we talked about all the different challenges inside of operations, and specifically as it relates to that war room scenario. Well, what would it look like if I could break down the silos, and as opposed to all teams coming together to share an update that's being then transcribed into notes, people coming in and asking for an update. What if we could create a view that really operated across those different silos, across the database, across the networking, across the storage piece, and pulled that into a central point that really broke down and demonstrated what does a service look like in terms of performance, in terms of availability, in terms of where are the alerts and alarms that are impacting my end customers ultimately right now. And so that's, really what it comes to as far as the use cases that I wanted to go over. And I'll bring up some examples of what that starts to look and feel like here in a second. But also taking it not only from a reactive standpoint. So whenever I do identify problems with an application that's impacting end users, whenever it becomes that SEB1 issue, what if I could get out in front of that issue and identify, hey, my CPU on my database server at the rate it's going is heading towards a breach of the threshold that I've set against it. Let me know that 2 hours, 4 hours in advance, as opposed to just whenever it happens. And so from a monitoring perspective and from an incident management perspective, certainly something that we want to keep in mind and try to manage effectively to really help to ease that the pain of being an operations manager of the on the day-to-day. So let me switch my screen here real fast. I'm going to stop sharing real fast and bring it back up on another one.
So John, you've got online viewers on this?
Yeah.
Good.
Let's see. And so kind of to illustrate the point, hold on. There we go.
Don't forget to share that.
Yep. There we go. Did that make it through?
Yes.
Awesome. Very good. And so to really illustrate the point of what you can start to think about whenever it comes to effectively managing an ops scenario and creating something that really brings everybody together. And you'll have to forgive me, it went a little funny for me on my screen here. But really what we tried to capture in a view like this is something that takes into account everything and on a view that brings it all together for everybody that's involved. And so, in an ops scenario, you want to create something that's relevant to the user that's logged in our case, be it an application owner for that particular application, and something that helps you visualize where inside of that infrastructure does the problem currently exist. And we can tie the test, the functional test, the end user test behind those indicators that really help us identify inside of what can be a very complex architecture. In our example, something that we've broken out to be relatively simple here. But identify, getting down to the level even as simple as, hey, what's the port availability look like between my web front end and my back end devices? Are those ports up? Are they available? Are the services that are core to that application, are they up? If they've stopped, can I automate the restart of them and create, just a level of healing to a certain extent inside of that architecture that really, again, draws attention to where problems exist and helps to smooth those out where we can.
Excuse me, is this a path that's a live tracing or is it what? Is this for a given example, is it static or what? This product of yours is automatically tracing the path.
So in this example, that's something that we built out to really show the logical topology of an application, and then also tied to the specific tests that we use to identify success for a particular piece of it. So this is something that we built out manually to really illustrate this particular application. And so just take, for example, I know we were talking about earlier, how do you know what to monitor inside of a picture? And one of the things that we work with customers on is really, just that, identifying what is the core metric that makes up success, particularly in production. What's a core metric that makes up success for that application, and how can I pull that together in a way that's meaningful, either in the form of an SLA calculation like we're looking at there across the bottom of the screen, or something that, to your point, traces out the transaction path of a user, be they accessing it internally or externally from the web. What's that logical flow look like for them as they're going through the different load balancers, the network paths, and hitting the various app database and storage pieces that are involved in that picture here. And so,
Sorry, is there kind of a time lapse view option where you can kind of see what that history looked like over the past days, weeks, months?
Absolutely. So whenever it comes to reporting, and particularly on performance and availability from the infrastructure standpoint, that's definitely something that we pull together and can build into a dashboard like this to be able to visualize that. And along the same lines of, you're talking about reporting, it's also something that we want to build into that alarm management system as well. So now, based on the information that I've collected over the last 2 weeks, over the last 4 weeks, let me know what's normal for that particular metric on that particular device that I'm monitoring. So not only do I get that visibility backwards, but also I start to alarm on deviation from normal as opposed to a hard-coded threshold that might not be applicable to a particular machine for a particular environment, a particular application, and really take it from more of a normalcy perspective as opposed to hey, we don't want to go over 80%. Well, maybe that's normal. And so, yeah, that was just the view that jumped to mind whenever we were talking about, really having that view into what's happening inside of the infrastructure right now. What can I operate off of whenever it comes to a war room scenario, and really identify, who's responsible for that issue right now. Who do I need to involve to ultimately resolve it, and turn all those end user experience indicators back green based on the functional tests that I can perform as well. And so with that, I'd love to, I know we got to have some great discussion going through all this, but just wanted to see if there were any questions, thoughts that really stem from everything that we got to talk about today.
So I would like to bring up that somebody said they are using New Relic. In our software for project, we are using Dynatrace. Not sure if I've heard about it. Dynatrace has got this concept of live app, right? Basically builds out that JavaScript that goes into your browser actually gets to capture every hop what it's able to take, and then the color it sends it to the collector, right? So it actually builds this kind of a thing. It doesn't say specifically like a server kind of a picture. It has got its own mnemonics that it puts in, but we are able to see at what path it goes. Like, that's called pure path. That's what they call it. It goes all the way to the DB and different names. I would ask, what is that you are able to do with New Relic?
So I can't really speak to that. I don't interface with it. I just know that we use it. It's not on the product that I normally work on specifically.
So the Dynatrace people, they themselves, for the last 2 years, they have been working on this new product. You can go to their website, you can take a look at it. They're saying that's the next gen of APM tools that they want to talk about, right? So they are saying that's going to eat New Relic as well.
You use that product in the environment?
We are using Dynatrace.
We are using New Relic.
Was it?
We are using New Relic.
Yes, New Relic, but I'm saying just go to the Dynatrace website. The new product that they have been working for the last 2 years, they're saying it will eat up. And New Relic. It's all because at the end of the day, it's all about an architecture, right? Whatever product it is, how it is implemented, what the technology stack it can support. how far it can scale, right? If you really go down to that level of details with besides the marketing, you just need to see how good a product is, and that's where you come in. So I'm personally interested in, even though the DevOps are working on it, this monitoring has been a big problem for us, and that's why we're starting to look at that as path.
So in the telco realm, they have probes everywhere, and the probes can give you real-time traffic delay analysis, whatever. I guess it's just not cost-effective in you guys' environments. Because everything y'all are talking about, I'm used to the network being monitored to the nth degree. Hell, the monitoring network is as big almost as the actual user traffic network. And whether it's continuous SNMP traps, Yang models of the network, a whole bunch of dynamics that it's there, but they spend a hell of a lot of money on it. I guess maybe just for you guys, alternately, that's just not there as a resource, or?
No, it's a couple of things, right? So one basic thing for, I am more looking into the cloud computing, not just the legacy, and that was my question coming up, but thanks you raised that point, is because, yes, you can elaborately put something in the network. I cannot put a network because I don't own that. My network stops at the firewall.
Sure.
Right? My own, which I own, routers or whatever is before that firewall. That I can spend enough money if everybody agrees to put whatever, networking or monitoring tools I want. Is outside of this is completely out of my control. So the question is, and my question was, when you had this one, right? So now what hops, and these servers, right, you have Web 1, Web 2, App 1, App 2. Those are not the servers, those are just instances, right, for me. What I am looking at is just the instances. Now, as an ops manager for an application, when you're on a legacy environment, everything you own, you can put whatever monitoring you want, you can, monitor it, you will get the view, you can get the reports or whatever. But once that goes away from your hand to the vendor's hand, they are now providing you whatever it is. They are taking about 50 to 60% of your BAU work out as well, right? Because now you don't have to monitor, now you don't have to prepare reports, now you don't have to do anything. It's just cooked right up off the vendor's side, whatever they do it. Now they might not be doing an extensive one, they might be doing just a very high level, this is just the only thing we have, you use it, right? So what is your work once this is broken off from a legacy to completely outside of your work? What then becomes your job in a day-to-day as an operation manager? Because now you don't have to maintain anything. Now you don't have to, patch any server. You don't have to reboot any server. You don't have to worry about networking, monitoring. What would you monitor? Apart from firewall, but after firewall, question is just whatever, I'll give an Amazon. Whatever Amazon is monitoring, if it's not good enough for you, what are your options at that point?
Sure.
Maybe they are just giving you a very high level monitor, not detailed one. What are your options? And if, let's suppose, even if they give you a very detailed one, how is your BAU job changes when you were monitoring it versus when you are just a service receiver?
Sure.
Literally.
Yeah. I think so. As far as it relates to the cloud in particular, it really comes back to, one, you do have what AWS exposes to you.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, although they're responsible for that host for those guest machines and for making sure those are up and available to you, I think there's still an element of system monitoring and management involved. And I'll give you an example. I was working just with a customer the other day that they were actually, it was an interesting scenario. They were reselling AWS space to their customers. And so they had the same question of now it's AWS's environment. How do I take a leg into that environment beyond what CloudWatch is going to capture and present for me. And so from that point, you can actually, at the end of the day, it's still, in their case, it was a Windows box. So we still have access to all the NT event logs, the perfmon metrics, things like that I can still reach in and capture, even though it's on a virtual machine, and capture that as it relates to the application that it's hosting, even though it's something that's now beyond my control, and I can basically report that back through CloudWatch in addition to what they've stood up for me. So I think there's still, and just from my perspective, there still certainly is an element of system monitoring that has to happen in the cloud, at least at this point, until we can get to the point where noisy neighbors isn't a problem, until we can get to a point where we can effectively manage and scale monitoring with our auto scaling groups and things like that.
But at least those tasks are gone from your end, right? Patching,
Sure.
rebooting, those are completely gone, because if you have to reboot for 180 days, well, guess what? You can just bring down the instance. The server at the end has to be rebooted. That's Amazon's responsibility, or whoever is hosting that, right?
Sure.
That the rack or the real hard server is rebooted.
Yeah.
So that it is. So that those goes away from you, right? That you don't have, as an operation manager, you don't have to do. You're not responsible for doing all this stuff.
Right. Yeah. You had a question?
Of course, I'm sure you guys sell single pane of glass. I'm not sure before. In theory, it's great. It makes total sense. But I was curious from calls that you've done and your experience, like, where's the pushback?
As far as?
Or even like probably sales guys here, where they present that to customers. Hey, wouldn't it be nice if you had? And if you could share, like, so where the pushback comes from. That's what you were showing before. Right?
Okay, so if I'm a client and I'm going to say, I can't afford the cost of this, how do you develop that value proposition to say, for every X you invest in this, this is what it's going to prevent, or it's going to give you visibility into? How do you frame that conversation up?
Yeah.
So we typically have a ROI team within the business itself. And the ROI team actually calculates several different metrics that you can measure on, and then we come up with a value, right? It might be a monetary value or a qualitative metrics that we can come up with, and then that's how we show the value. But I think his question was more along the lines of if customers are saying no to your product, what could be the reasons for saying no? Or is it?
I mean, because it's not every prospect that's going to share. Like, hey, if we're down this amount of time, it costs us this much. Like, they're not here.
The only reason I could think of, because my application is moving in, if we are getting pushback, if the only pushback is the security, because the data is going into the cloud, and it's financial data, it's personal information of people going outside the firm, outside those firewalls, which are built like 10 times better than anybody can build, although we get these as well. So, but still, I think that's the only pushback I have heard when I propose, hey, let's move this application from legacy to cloud. Because the cases, the pros which I presented were way too much for them. But then the pushback came up, okay, how do we make sure that the data doesn't get breached?
How can you ensure a regulated environment in the cloud?
Because cloud could be either, and more so if it's a public cloud, like Amazon, you're literally going out and putting that data on the world. Anybody can come in and just, intersect it. Of course, that was a major pushback we got as an application. So we said, okay,
How did you solve it?
We are working with our cybersecurity team, and they are building out a solution like a pipeline, which is the encrypted data will be transferred, supposedly that's what the proposed solution is, on an encrypted pipeline. So it's like, not even triple that, there's 256-bit worth of encryption, and above and over another 56 worth of encryption. And that's the reason why we are building our internal cloud. That was another reason why we said, okay, you know what, you want to go to cloud? forget about public. They'll build you an internal cloud. So, which will be not controlled, the data will stay inside, but then it will mimic exactly like, not just your application. I can bring 5 other applications on the same infrastructure, where you guys don't have to worry about ops part of it, you just worry about dev.
But there's still someone in the organization worrying about ops, it's just no longer you.
Just no longer us, exactly, and they are not calling them ops. So it's just the terminology change, that's what, the initial conversation is, I'm not ops anymore. I'm infrastructure guy, I'm not ops. But then I'm like, okay, what application fails, I reach out to you. I understand that infrastructure fails, I reach out to you. But then remember, somebody has to work on application. When they fail, we have to analyze it. They're saying their own mind, but that's that's for us, for me personally, that was a major pushback. It's data security or transparency going on public clouds. But I mean, any other can say any pushback. I don't know any other reason.
No, I would probably say that I have a single point solution for each one of those today for monitoring. It's all monitored. It's just not integrated.
No, from monitoring side of it, yes. I mean, you could see, but then look at the overall, gain of going to cloud. I mean, yes, for some part, maybe you have to put an extra effort here to get the monitoring, rather than you're saying it's a single line monitoring, everything is monitored. Now I have to build this, I have to take something out of my control, and then rely on somebody else to monitor properly, just like I want to do it. But then I think if you put the conditions in, I mean, if you take everything separately, there is cons in everything. But when you combine them together to see, okay, you know what, this negative part of this portion actually will become positive here. And as an overall picture, you will see it's a good process to have.
Yeah, another issue when you're having an incident call, trying to get a hold of somebody on the other side of the firewall.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We haven't reached there, but we are not discussing that, but you're right. There will be challenges, and I completely understand that. MSP is one of our customers, right? Vendors. Actually, we are MSP's customers. They're calling themselves Black Knight now. MSP is no more MSP, it's a Black Knight. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. We are facing the exact same thing, right? Calling because we are now communicating with vendor to get the MSP data, right? So the thing is, if something goes wrong with MSP, we don't get, there's a lot of issues when MSP goes down or there is a connection breakage here, right? And to get them, they never come to our bridge. It's our bridge.
Right,
it's not there.
Especially the units on the right side, on the left, starting with, okay, we gotta go to the left and the L3, and how many hops is it making, and how many people do you have to get?
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, we haven't reached that point yet, but yes, that's one of our kind of a non-functional requirements, saying, hey, how do I monitor, how do I log, how do I then, next point is, how is the communication gonna work? In normal process, in a case of an issue, how do I reach out?
Coming back on the governance side, the vendor management component.
It becomes vendor management. It does become a vendor management. And somebody has to be a point of contact for this person, and then we reach out to that. But yeah, we're not there yet. That's why I said it's a small application. But yeah, when time comes, that question will be raised, and we'll figure it out what the solution is for that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's another pushback. That's a very valid pushback, because that increases our downtime. That itself, that alone, that portion of vendor management will increase your downtime. They'll take some time to come to your bridge and explain, then they go back to their bridge and explain, so it's like, yeah. And that's a valid point. That could be a very, very good perspective. Nobody wants to go that route. Yeah, for us, it was always security of data. That's top priority. Yes and now.
So tying back to the, again, it's not related to what you guys were discussing, but tying back to the situation of auto tracing, the CA application performance management, that's another topic that's comparative to New Delhi and Dynatrace can actually trace the application's path and the transaction path and then find out and build a nice picture out like this, right? So that's possible using the YE solution that you're currently using?
No, actually, we don't have that. That's why we need to Dynatrace. I think what you were saying is, you said something about UEM component. We don't, we are not licensed for it. So we didn't have that, so that's why we went to the other item.
Great. Any other questions or thoughts just based off what we've gotten to go over, or any feedback for me just based on everything that we got to walk through today? Awesome.
I know there was some interest about release management. Once we're done with this, we can have a conversation. If you're interested, stay back. We can have a conversation about that.
Perfect. Well, great. Well, everyone, thank you so much for your time. And I've got a couple business cards up here. Please feel free to grab one, drop me a note, let me know what you thought of our session today, and really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us this evening.